Hi, I'm Matt, and this is Duke and Chloe, and today we're going to be talking about winter pruning. Today we're going to be focusing on pruning that you can do yourself at your own home and with tools that you can buy locally in stores like Home Depot, Lowe's, maybe an independent hardware store if you're still lucky enough to have one of those in your community. One of the most important tools that we're going to use when we're pruning our shrubs and trees at home is hand pruners. These are Fisker's hand pruners available at Home Depot. They work very well. They have replaceable blades if your blade gets dull. These shears are also Fisker's from Home Depot. We don't like to do a lot of shearing, but these can come in handy sometimes. Loppers, again, not a tool that we use a whole lot when we're doing fine pruning, but they do have their place. When we're pruning small trees and woody shrubs, we're going to use our hand saws a lot. This is a Corona brand hand saw carried at Home Depot. Again, a very good brand. It's not as expensive as some of the tools like Felco that maybe industry professionals use. Here's a larger pruning saw. This is more suitable if you're reducing limbs on a hardwood tree in your front yard, perhaps. Also Corona. And then here again from Fisker's is a pole clip. You're not able to make quite as clean of cuts with this as you can with a saw or hand pruners, but it helps you to reach areas that you could not reach on your own. It's telescoping. This is really one of my favorite tools. We use a heavier duty version of this at Bartlett. You can really reach out with this tool. You probably have seen these in the store, and they come with a saw blade attached here, very similar to the blade on my Corona saw. I've removed mine. It's the first thing I do anytime I've bought a tool like this. Those saws are not really very useful. It's really hard to make good cuts with them, and you can often get the saw stuck in a tree branch. But the clip, that's the useful part of this tool. You'll notice what you don't see here is any type of power shears or hedge trimmers. I don't own any, I don't use them. They have their place maybe in brush clearing. I've used them for that. But when it comes to pruning shrubs, yeah, they can achieve a look that a lot of people like, but it's really not good for the shrubs, especially for boxwoods, which is one of the shrubs we're going to be pruning today. And finally, we have our rake and we have our tarp, which we'll use to clean up. We'll also be using a ladder a very little bit today. You should never use a ladder for pruning unless you have somebody holding the ladder. You should try to avoid it. That's one reason we have the pole clip. And so we'll be starting off with the boxwood today. Okay, so this is the boxwood we're going to be pruning today. It's a Green Mountain cultivar. This is my son Brett. He's going to be holding the ladder for me today so I don't fall. 3 years ago, this boxwood was covering that fireplace vent there, and we wanted to reduce the height of it. But to reduce the size of a shrub that much immediately will leave you with a bare looking shrub with no leaves on it. So what we did over the course of the last 3 years, first we opened up a hole in the middle of the shrub. And what that did was allow more light and air to reach the interior of the shrub. And look at all that beautiful green growth we have in there now. And what that allows you to do is to reduce the size of your shrub without making it look bare. We reduced it, I think we've reduced it, 6 to 12 inches each of the last 2 years. And we're going to do the same thing again this year. Maybe not quite as aggressive this year. It's a pretty manageable size right now, but we do want to, keep the size under control. We don't ever want it covering that fireplace vent again. We're going to start with our handsaw today, and we're going to be doing some more pocket pruning. Some people call it punch pruning or renewal pruning. That's what I was talking about when I showed you that hole that I opened up in the top of the shrub a few years back. What we're going to do is look for some of the older and taller branches or stems and remove them completely. And what that's going to do is open up the inside of the shrub to more light and air, and we're going to get more of that great interior growth. So the small saw is better than the big one here. You got to take your time, be really careful. One of the most common injuries in arboriculture is handsaw cuts. A nice clean cut and remove the branch. So now you can almost barely see it, but this hole is going to allow more light and air to the inside of the shrub, and we're going to see more of that good new growth on the inside. We're going to look for some branches on the other side where the shrub is denser. I'm going to remove this entire branch from the base. It's a similar hole to the one we had on the other side. It's going to, again, allow more light and air in without really changing the appearance of the shrub. Okay, so the other nice thing about pocket pruning and opening these holes up is that, the sunlight is what really gives us the burst of interior growth, but the better airflow is what lets, it lets the plant dry out faster, and thus it's going to be less susceptible to fungal diseases like boxwood blight. While we were doing this, we found that this shrub might have a little bit of an insect problem. Sometimes when you see this type of pattern on the bottom of a leaf, it's a insect called boxwood psyllid. Sometimes you can break a leaf open and find the larva. There it is right there. But this is an easy treatment. We can we'll do a soil treatment, a systemic soil treatment on this shrub in about 3 weeks, and this insect problem will go away right away. Now we're going to focus on reducing the size of this shrub, and we'd like to do all of this if we can using the hand pruners. Always good to cut back to a branch union if you can. Less is always more. You can always cut here and then decide you want to cut more, but you can't put the branch back once you've cut it off. Now, this is where people become tempted to use the power shears. If you just don't have time to prune your shrub using only hand pruners, these manual shears are going to make a nicer cut than the power shears, and they're going to be better for your shrub. You just have a little bit more control over what's going on. You want to reduce the height just enough that it won't be any taller than it is now by this time next year. So we don't have to take off a whole lot. Always see your cut if you can before you make it. And then we're going to want to reduce it here. We can deal with a little bit of encroachment over the sidewalk, but we don't want it to be out here by the middle of July. So we're going to do some reduction pruning along the front of the shrub. Again, trying to cut back to a branch union when you can. And if you start to lose patience with that, you can just go to your manual shears again. And if you want to have a somewhat manicured look, this is going to be a better option for you than the hand pruners. The hand pruners will give you more of a natural look, but natural being the key word, a shrub in nature is going to be, in general, healthier than a shrub that's manipulated by man. One of the things I like to do when I'm pruning shrubs is prune for a little while and then take a few steps back. See what I've done so far and what I still want to achieve. As you can see, we've reduced the size a little bit. We're starting to get a little bit more shaping without doing away completely with the natural habit. So we're going to go back to work on this shrub. But I think we're, a good part of the way towards where we want to be. Okay, we're getting close to being done with our boxwood pruning, and I want to stop and talk a little bit about cleanup. As you can see, we've been cleaning as we go, always much easier, much safer. You don't want to be tripping over branches that you've cut while you're pruning your shrub. You saw the tarp at the beginning of the video. Those are great if you can take the debris to the curb and get it picked up by your local trash service or municipality. They're also great if you can throw it in the bed of a truck. If you don't have either one of those, these lawn refuse bags are great. They're designed for grass clippings and leaves, but if you cut the pieces, the branches of your shrub small enough, pack them down, you'd be really surprised at how much you can get into these bags and how many of these bags you can get into the trunk of a car or the back of a van or SUV. Took a break from pruning our boxwood because it started to rain. You never want to prune boxwoods when it's wet. It can add to the possibility of diseases like boxwood blight. That's particularly if it's between 60 and 80 degrees. At the time it was around 50, but we don't want to take any chances. So we're going to turn our attention now to the crepe myrtle. The idea with this crepe myrtle is we want to get it to be more uniform in size. We've got this stem that's much taller than the other ones, and it's pretty hard to hurt a crepe myrtle when you're pruning it. You hear a lot of conflicting things about crepe myrtle, and some people will say remove anything that's thinner than a pencil. There's no hard and fast rule on crepe myrtles. I've cut them down to the ground in May and had them 3 feet tall and in full bloom again by the middle of July. But you want to make good cuts and take a step back and focus on what your goals are with the crepe myrtle. So this is where our pull clip comes in super handy. Again, it's not going to make quite as nice a cut as we could make with a saw, but it saves us from getting on a ladder. It's safer, and like I said, it's hard to hurt a crepe myrtle as long as you're not too aggressive with it. And we're just looking for branch unions that we can cut back to achieve the size that we want. Crepe myrtles bloom on new growth, so when we prune them this time of year, late February, early March, we're going to generate a bunch of new growth. So in July, we're going to have a real dense bloom coming off the old cuts. All right, this is why we use the small saw instead of the big one, because what we want to do is cut this branch with as little damage as possible to the branch where my thumb is now. So we're going to very gently start the cut. Be really careful here. One of the most common accidents in arboriculture is handsaw cuts. We've got a pretty nice clean cut. So we've made significant progress on pruning our crepe myrtle, and like so many other things in life, it pays to clean as you go. So we're going to stop again and talk a little bit about cleanup. This tool, the jet sled, is something that we actually do use in professional arboriculture, but I highly recommend these for your home if you do any kind of yard work. They cost about $60. I got mine from Dick's Sporting Goods. I'm sure you can get them from Amazon, but they're a really great way to move brush around. You can move a bag or two of mulch, move your tools around with you, grab it by the string, and away you go. And when we're done pruning, you've got the big stuff raked up, we've carried it off in the jet sled. You want to do a final cleanup, and a great thing for that is some kind of a power blower. This is a steel backpack blower. It's great, used by professionals. I don't necessarily recommend it for your home unless you think you're going to be using it a lot. They're heavy, gas-powered equipment, needs more maintenance than electric. Typically for your home, unless you have a lot of ground to cover, is a nice electric blower. I recommend, depending on the size of your yard, one with a cord instead of cordless, but there are some good cordless ones out there. This is a Toro that I got at Home Depot.